God of War, Pain. Entering Athens. Starting at the docks with some cursed legionnaires, and you're going to see some strategies you've already seen before and some strategies you'll be seeing quite a lot of as we deal with these fellows and we get introduced to the concept of just how strong collision is in this majestic game. So, as before guys, we're going to be doing a lot of triangles to launch into Orion's harpoons. We're going to be doing all kinds of manipulation with the harpoon to hopefully land on some other enemies and do some collision, and we'll be mixing in some grabs when we can. These starting enemies, you can have your way with them in the air if you choose to as well. But pushing forward here, there's a couple more fights on this bridge. If you're new to this project and you're wondering what it's all about, it is essentially just a challenge run for God of War, but it will have an emphasis on fighting the battles. This difficulty and this challenge run in its difficulty are very demanding, and God of War is a game that leads to a lot of knowledge coming through to help you win most encounters. And the smartest way to play is to use all of this knowledge to your ability. And you can see that in a lot of the great players that play this series. This project, however, is not meant to be that smart as we come up against our first encounter with the Minotaurs here. These are Minotaur grunts, and I'm just going to get in the middle of them and start blocking and attacking and seeing what we can do. But there are a lot of setups in this game that can lead you to being incredibly effective. And I'm going to try to fight most of the things that I can fight by just getting in there and dealing with it. And it's a bit more demanding on you as a player because there are safer and more intelligent ways to approach the battles. But that's kind of what I'm going for in this project, coming back to the game. I'm coming back to the game from a perspective of I've played a lot of other action games since I've been with God of War, and I want to bring just the insight that those games have given me into this game. But that being said, I do think it's good to know what you can do to get what you can get away with in these games, which is super important. But this Minotaur here, if you don't know about this particular enemy, it is of course a nuisance when it comes to launching them, because when you try to launch them sometimes it seems like sometimes they go up and sometimes they don't. And the thing that you learn really quickly is the more aggressive you are, the more sometimes it can bite you in the ass, because they'll lead to blocking, they'll lead to doing their counters and their push attacks and things. But after a while of fighting them, you see that trying to launch them during their moves is one of the best strategies you can do on those early Minotaurs. So if you wait for him to do what he's doing, and then you can punish him accordingly, and you'll generally get your way. But there's quite a lot going on with that enemy, especially as they bring the different variants in, and some of them have complete launch immunity to certain setups, but you can still get around it if you know the game well enough. And a name that I'll be mentioning a lot will be a guy by the name of Zim, who has done this run no damage multiple times in multiple setups. And if you want to know all of the crazy information, all the tech, all the subtle just legacy facts that people have forgotten or maybe never even knew, his is the run that I would point you to, because I've been watching it after I did my own, and the parts where I was banging my head against things and having a really miserable time and getting super frustrated, he had very elegant and intelligent and efficient strategies of doing those moments that involve boundary manipulation and AI manipulation and just a really strong understanding of the fundamentals of God of War. And a lot of the old God of War players that I remember back in the day aren't around anymore, but fortunately the new guard have taken up that toll and are going forth and doing wonderful things. And speaking of wonderful things, we have our first encounter here with the armoured Cyclops, who you can actually get to kill himself by pushing him off, which is really funny. I like this enemy a lot. He's probably my favourite Cyclops in the series, having come back, because you can use movement to avoid everything he does, and the hitboxes are incredibly good on him, so it enables you to be quite aggressive with movement and attacking, and this is exactly what I want to be doing coming back to God of War. When I first played this series, all I did was block and roll. That was literally my answer to everything. You know, if they had any unblockables, I would always use the roll. If they had anything that I could deal with the guard, I would do that. And I was quite a static player that didn't think about the spacing, didn't think about the intervals between moves and what you can do to set up opportunities for you to attack. Well, no more coming back here as we take on the Medusa fight, which this is a really interesting encounter because judging by the statistics, This boss, if you don't do the execution, so if you're doing a run where you can't grab enemies, you might have to fight this boss for 10 years, because I think she's got an absurd amount of HP, like 10,000 HP or something. And that's a lot of HP in this game. But the thing that's cool about this particular encounter is she's not as fast as she seems to be, and she teaches you how to fight the Gorgons. So the idea here is, she's not too fast unless she's counterattacking. See, these counterattacks, they come out like lightning, but they only happen because of your aggression. If you let her do her normal moves, she's got a bit of a tell, she'll sashay a little bit, and you'll see what's happening. But the more aggressive you are, the more aggressive she seems to become, and that's when she seems to get really, really quick. And because games now are so bloody easy and nothing attacks fast and everything's so free, when you first start attacking this monster and she starts doing those counter dashes and those big attacks, it feels like she's moving at the speed of light, because there aren't really games that make you deal with an enemy that moves this quick anymore. But you are safe to block most of it, and the idea of the Gorgons is that when she does the stare, you can then use that as an opportunity to launch her and do some damage. And you can do all kinds of interesting setups on this fight, where you knock her into the air and you kind of jump into the air with her and dunk her into the ground. And you can do some things with Orion's harpoon. You know, you can do some launch setups where you keep going into aerials and then they're hoping that it gets her with that. But I'm just going to do the tried and tested, you know, defensive attacker when I can. Get the grab. And the go-to strategy I have for the Gorgon gaze in this is the same that I did in Chains of Olympus. I will almost always try to roll out of the way of it and do a Plume of Prometheus to get the bounce to stop her. And sadly, we don't have the gaze affecting anybody else in this game because they didn't get to that just yet. So we're going to have to respect it more than I would like to. And then of course in this fight, I could be incorrect here guys, but I couldn't find a way to do this room without using magic, and I killed about 15 Minotaurs. It just seems to go on forever. So alas, I'm going to be using Medusa's gaze because it is a tutorial. And if you know the speedrunning strats, you can get out of this room and kind of skip it and, you know, keep infinite magic and all that good stuff. But we're not doing that. So instead, freeze them, shatter them, and then have some fun. And again, it's a really good opportunity to practice fighting the Minotaurs, because you're going to need to know what to do with these guys, because they turn up a lot. And you can loop them too, as long as you launch them in midair. If you get that launch on them, you can follow them up and then you can proceed to air spam the grab in midair, and you'll just repeatedly bang them into the ground. But swiftly moving on, we have some encounters here where I think this might be one of the fights where you can use the ballista to clean these guys up, but we're not going to be using anything like that, guys. We're not going to be blocking people off and using splash or anything. We're going to be jumping in there and fighting. It's not a smart thing to do. It leads to a lot of resets, but luckily I'm on emulator, so I can always just bang a save state before the fight and then get back in there. I don't have to load files, I don't have to wait for consoles or anything, so it makes my time a lot easier and a lot more fun for me. But this is an instance of wringing the enemies out, the mighty slam dunk, the virtual fighter approach to combat, and you want to always try and do this, guys, if you can. If you can bounce a Legionnaire, and then you can use Orion's Harpoon to misdirect him towards an edge, if there's no collision, you can chuck him off. And it's incredibly elegant, and it will give you a much easier time of getting through the sequence. And speaking of sequences, we have our first wall climb of Athens, and I'm going to be speeding these up now. I was inspired by Zim to speed them up, because even he sped them up. And originally I kept these in and they were quite long, because I was trying to come up with some strategies that didn't involve just using the grab. And it seems like grabbing on the walls is always going to be one of the best things to do because it's an instant kill. But instead I was experimenting with the quick attack and the fat attack, as I call it, the heavy attack. And truth be told, I think the only thing I really did was waste my time. But what I did see on one of his videos was, if you wait for the enemy here to jump towards you and you jump towards them, you'll hit each other, they'll knock you off the wall, and you'll skip this sequence. And when I saw that, it blew my mind. That's the thing I love about watching people that know a lot about games. You know, when you come across somebody who's really invested time in something to learn it and to understand it to a high level, you get beautiful pieces of information like that. And I didn't have that before this playthrough. So now I do, and the next time I get to that sequence, if I play again, I will be using it. But here are the conventional Gorgons, and these Gorgons can be repeatedly looped with Orion's Harpoon. And if you don't want to do the quick time event, which involves turning the analogs because it can be easy to fail and it will lead to shenanigans, you can just do this to kill them instead. You can also do it with the air throw too, if you spam the air throw to stomp them into the ground. It's incredibly powerful and really fun. But did you see that there, guys? That's kind of the optimal thing you want to do with Minotaurs if you can. When they're doing their big baited move, during the startup of their animation, if you hit them with an Ascension, you get that launched, you will kill them. And then in this encounter, this Gorgon can be used to stone the other Minotaurs, which is really nice. And we get the grab there and we go into the wonderful execution. I just love watching this game, and I'm so hungry to record more of this series and put more on YouTube. But YouTube right now is wanting other things, and if you do the same thing on YouTube, it tends to suffer, which is the sad case, unless you're a specialist. I wish people were as excited about old school God of War as I am, but they're just simply not. And I'll say that now, and someone in the comments like, but Chris, I love it, and he loves it, and they love it, and it's like, I get it, man, I love it too, but like people would rather see newer things, and it's just unfortunate, because they just don't make them like they used to, and there's such a magic to these games. And it's been a nice amount of time since I recorded this that I'm forgetting just how much it pissed me off when I was recording it. So the game is amazing again, even though when I was playing it I was getting really salty. But this is an interesting fight, this. I like fighting lots of the Legionnaires, especially before they get the crazy armor on them. When they start coming with all the crazy armor and doing all kinds of shenanigans, it gets a little different, but these guys are very, very fun. You can mess around with Orion's Harpoon, you can use Prometheus to give them the bounce, you can work in some of your different strings to the Hercules enders. And one thing I didn't realise without watching Zim's videos was just how good Valor is when it comes to collision when there's a lot of enemies. That's one of those moves that I only ever do that by mistake. Because I'm trying to do the buffer for the other move and I don't get it. And it's interesting, isn't it, the idea of kind of neglecting a move because you don't see the merits of it, but then seeing somebody use it in some specific moments to get that collision and just how powerful it is. It definitely opened my eyes, and I'm going to start using it a lot more and experimenting. But this sequence, guys, is a really, really long rope segment. And again, I was experimenting here in the idea of trying to do things that didn't involve using the grab. But it seems like the attack them to flinch them into the grab to kill them is always objectively going to be the best strategy. Instead, I wanted to try something that was a little bit safer, but it takes a long time, so I've sped this up as well. And the idea here is, I go forward to bait the spawn, I stun the guy, I drop off the rope, I come all the way back, and then I kill them when they're on the rope, and they can't really do anything to me. The hazards of this strategy is that it's really easy to fall off when you're doing it, and it took like 10 minutes, which is obviously not the best way to do it. The best way to do it, again to reference the other player, is to know the spawns and to bait them in such a way that they whiff and then you go in and execute them. And the way that Zim does that on his run is beautiful. But I don't know these rope spawns as well as him, and I don't know the spacing like he does, and I really don't like these moments. They frustrate me, and I don't have any patience for them. So I just went in and brute forced it, and it took a while, but I got it, and that's what matters, you know? And in future, if I were to cover this game again, and actually do no damage, I would probably remove them, because as much as they are a challenge and as much as they can be some of the more difficult moments, I just don't think they're fun to watch. Even as I've sped them up, they're not that fun to watch. You know, it's fun to watch somebody who knows what they're doing and has it down to a T and works it just majestically, but once you've seen it, do you really want to see it multiple times? And that's the issue, isn't it, when the laws of diminished returns on a video. Videos are really, really cool that first time when you get that exposure to it, but unless somebody's showing you something different, or unless you just have a really high tolerance and really like watching something that you love, it gets old. And it doesn't matter how good the thing is, you know, you watch somebody do the most amazing thing, it blows you away, you watch them do it again, and it blows you away a little bit less. And that's one of the things that drives me when I do projects. I love the idea of coming back and doing it in a way that I didn't do it before and showing you something you might not have seen. And this corridor here, you can use some environmentals to skip this fight, but I wanted to fight these guys. But it must be said, when you bounce them, because of the collision on some of the roof parts here, it is quite difficult sometimes to grab them. And because there's so many of them, it puts you into this position of sometimes you'll grab the wrong guy and bounce off, sometimes you'll get into all kinds of bits of trouble, and it becomes quite dangerous. But that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for encounters that push me into an uncomfortable place. And the thing with God of War 1 is it's really eager to push me into uncomfortable places, because some of the normal fights are just really uncomfortable. And the no damage stipulation would have been really fun in this game, but then you remember, don't you? You remember the sirens in the desert. You know, you remember some of the gimmick fights. You remember the architect's tomb and that moving floor. And it's just, yeah. Maybe another time. Maybe I'll have an epiphany and I'll want to do that, but it's just not for me, that one. So instead, we're going to come through here and do as much damage as we can and move on. But it is interesting. I've become almost this guy now that's so anti-remakes. Can you imagine if they remade this game? They'd fucking ruin it, dude. They would completely just get rid of everything that made God of War cool. And I'm not talking about what they've done with the new games. The new games are a completely different breed and people really enjoy that, and that's awesome, even though I don't. I'm talking about a true remake. Like, look at Resident Evil 4, where they've got intermittent stuns now. Like, are you high? The shotgun doesn't have the consistent knockdown. Like, are you fucking drunk? I just don't know what planet I'm on anymore. And can you imagine a Kratos that's not grabbing everything and destroying it? Can you imagine if sometimes you grab people and they just break your grab? Just randomly? And I'm not talking about enemies that can't be grabbed. I'm talking about straight up, you go up to a Legionnaire, you got to grab that dude and throw him at his friend. You go up to an archer, you got to grab that dude and throw him for the collision on his friends. And he's just like, nah fam, you can't grab me. Heartbreaking. But that's what they do, because they don't understand the mechanics. Thank you for watching. You take care now.